joining the Security Council, who says that the conflict should end for humanitarian aid to be delivered.
Following the Israeli offensives against Rafah since the 6th of May, over 1 million people have been displaced once again, desperately seeking shelter and safety. 1.9 million people are now displaced across Gaza. I'm deeply concerned about reports of new evacuation orders issued into the area of Khan Yunis. Its impact on the civilian population is deep. In Gaza, nowhere is safe.
Okay, we'll bring in our correspondent Gabriel Elizondo, who's joining us from the United Nations. So, Gabriel, what more did the coordinator say about the needs in Gaza and how to get more aid into the Gaza Strip?
Well, number one, and this is important to keep reminding people because it can't be stated enough, and that is a ceasefire. She said that again. She said we can talk all we want about different ways to get aid in to Gaza. Until there is a full and permanent ceasefire, it's like running up a hill. It's very, very difficult. Nevertheless, she briefed the council, and I would basically summarize it as one step forward, two steps back. She said that, among other things, they need a better deconfliction mechanism to get aid into Gaza. That's number one. They also needed more assurances that they could get basic supplies in to not only people in Gaza that need it, but also to UN staff and personnel, medical doctors that are still lacking the basics to help those in need. And she also said they need more diversified routes coming into Gaza as well. She mentioned that she's in discussion with Israeli officials about trying to reopen the Rafah crossing, which has been closed now for nearly 2 months. She said it's not happening yet, but she said there are discussions in that front. So there is a wide array of things that need to be done. She painted a very grim picture, quite frankly, about the situation in Gaza, and that basically that pretty much everything needs to get into Gaza that is needed. But until there's a ceasefire, it will be increasingly difficult.
And Gabriel, she's also in charge of Gaza reconstruction. Did she mention how that might happen?
She is. She's in charge of humanitarian and reconstruction for Gaza, this senior coordinator that was appointed by the Secretary General after Security Council Resolution 2720 in December of last year. She is in charge of reconstruction. She did mention that. She talked about if they can get these aid mechanisms in place and working to their full capacity, she sees that as part of the reconstruction efforts, these aid corridors that could be coming in. But it's really theoretical, quite frankly, because they can't even get the aid in that they need at the scale that they need. So while she talks about reconstruction and the monumental task that it will entail, quite frankly, and to be quite blunt, we're not there yet. And I think she knows we're not there yet. The international community is not there yet because Israel's war on Gaza continues. So while she's in charge of reconstruction, it's still off very much in the horizon. And while it's very much just a theoretical discussion at this point.
All right, thank you. Gabriel Elizondo reporting from the UN. Nearly 100 people have died in northern India due to a stampede at a religious gathering, but police have warned the number of dead could rise. Thousands of people had gathered to celebrate the Hindu deity Shiva in Hathras district in the state of Uttar Pradesh. The crush reportedly happened as people were leaving the venue, and police are investigating the incident.
A very tragic accident took place. A religious event celebrating Boli Baba was going on in the Mulegarki village of Hathras district. A stampede happened.
Senior officials of the central government are in constant touch with the Uttar Pradesh government. I assure everyone through this house that the victims will be helped in every way. The administration is engaged in relief and rescue work under the supervision of the state government.
Riot police in Kenya have fought with protesters in the capital Nairobi and other cities as anti-tax demonstrations turn into calls for the government to step down. There's also growing anger over the use of excessive force during the earlier protests against proposed tax hikes, which were scrapped. Rights groups say up to 39 people were killed, dozens are missing, and many others are injured. Malcolm Webb joining us from Nairobi. Malcolm, what's the situation where you are, as well as in other parts of the country right now?
Here in central Nairobi, there's relative calm now and a heavy deployment of riot police. A couple of trucks full of them there after yet another day of the police breaking up even the smallest gathering of protesters using tear gas, water cannon. But that still didn't stop hundreds of protesters coming here to the city centre. Police on some of the highways leading into Nairobi have blocked them off to try and stop protesters coming into the city. In Kangemi, on the main highway that goes through the city, there's been also a day of unrest. Protesters there were tear gassed, some set up burning roadblocks. Most of these demonstrations are starting peacefully, but then when they're met by violence from the police, some of the demonstrators are turning violent, throwing stones or setting fire to things in the street. There's been unrest in other towns and cities as well. In the port city of Mombasa, protests that again started peacefully turned violent. We've heard that at least one person was killed there today. And there have been demonstrations in many other towns across the country. Now it seems that each time President William Ruto speaks, as he did on the television here on Sunday, it just seems to make demonstrators more angry. They feel in his most recent comments he didn't take responsibility for all the people that have been killed, who you just mentioned. And that's why across the country the protesters are calling for President William Ruto to go.
So what do the protesters plan for the days ahead then?
They have a program of different kinds of protest activities planned for each day. Some days it involves gathering here in the city centre, and in other places other activities are online. Social media has played a key role in this. On Wednesday, for example, demonstrators are planning to name and shame MPs, exposing the various corruption scandals that each of them have been implicated in. And it's corruption that's been endemic in Kenyan politics for generations that was at the heart of the anger that so many people felt when in recent weeks the government proposed to increase taxes on them. This is in a context where there's a growing middle class, a growing number of people who are educated, a growing number of people who are online, and after many years of grievances that weren't so often expressed about blatant corruption and what many people feel is misspending by the government, it was those proposed tax hikes that brought people out onto the streets. But that's now turned into calls for, as you mentioned at the beginning, the whole government of President William Ruto stepping aside. That's what the demonstrators say they now want.
All right, thank you. Malcolm Webb reporting from Nairobi. 2 humanitarian workers have been killed in an attack on their convoy in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo by angry protesters. Earlier, the charity Tear Fund said 2 of its employees were missing following the attack in Kuvnano on Sunday. Protesters are angry at the government as the armed group, the M23, made gains in North Kivu province. Anawaikani has more from Butembo.
In the city of Butembo here, this is one of the big towns which is right now a permanent target of the M23 because they have been saying they are coming here and people, many people are talking about it, and also the tension around this town is very huge because at night, for example, people, youth are putting different barricades and also they are setting fires. These youth, they are also going to some of the hotels trying to search for people who are coming here in the town, and they are saying they are protecting the town from any kind of infiltration from the M23, and this is creating more fear. But soldiers around here, there are not too many because soldiers are now reinforcing the front line. They are trying to go over there. Then the youth are trying to make their own order here, but police and other authorities are trying to assure the population in the town, but the situation remains very tense.
To France now, where President Emmanuel Macron's centrist Together movement and the left-wing New Popular Front are scrambling to stop the far right from gaining power. Marine Le Pen's national rally received the highest share of the vote in the first round of parliamentary elections. Candidates have until 6 p.m. local time, that's in just over 30 minutes, to withdraw from the next round on Sunday. So as many as 306 out of 577 seats in the National Assembly were facing a runoff between 3 candidates. But now, more than 200 candidates have dropped out of the race to improve the chances of keeping the far right from securing an absolute majority in the National Assembly. Natasha Butler is joining us now from Paris. So it seems to be pretty much a scramble, Natasha, as that deadline approaches. Tell us more and tell us what's happening.
Well, this is what tends to happen in elections in France, where you have a constituency where you have a far-right candidate in the lead, but a couple of other candidates just behind that far-right candidate. It's called a three-way runoff race, basically. And what we're seeing in this election is that there are a majority of constituencies in France with a far-right candidate in the lead. And in some of those constituencies, the other candidates from the leftist alliance here in France and the centrist party of Emmanuel Macron, what they're negotiating. They're talking about, should we step down and we'll give you a better chance of beating the far-right candidate in that constituency. So we're seeing a number of candidates from the left, from Macron's party, who are deciding to step down to give a better chance of trying to block a far-right candidate win in each constituency. It's not easy because Macron's party doesn't like the left alliance doesn't like Macron's party, so it's very personal, very difficult, but there is this feeling, this sense that it is important for France to uphold its values, that the far right simply must not win a majority in this election. Now, the far right, we've heard from Marine Le Pen saying this is the country trying to stage some sort of coup d'etat. They're not happy about it. They're calling it anti-democratic. They don't like this kind of tactic or manoeuvring, but it's perfectly legal. It's been done in many other elections, and there's not really much they can do about it. But what we don't know is what sort of impact it will actually have after the second round, because you can't tell vote for the only other candidate left in the race against the far right constituency, or whether they'll simply abstain and not vote at all. So it doesn't really predict much at this stage. We can only wait for the outcome next Sunday.
Yeah, and Natasha, is it surprising that we haven't heard from President Macron at all?
I mean, perhaps not surprising in the sense that the French president's party, centrist party, did so badly in the first round of this snap election, trailing in third place behind the far-right party of Marine Le Pen and this left-wing alliance. It's an embarrassing blow for the French president. He called this snap election, obviously hoping that his party would do much better. He said he was calling for clarity. Well, he got clarity, but perhaps not the sort that he actually wanted. He was last seen in public on Sunday when he went to vote with his wife in northern France. He was wearing, rather unusually, a casual baseball cap and leather jacket, not the sort of look we're used to seeing Emmanuel Macron in. Very unusual, and we've not heard from him since. But again, it's very hard to tell whether or not he's just waiting to see what happens until Sunday, because it's totally unpredictable at this stage what those results will be, even if it looks as if the far right will do very well.
Okay, thank you, Natasha Butler, reporting from Paris. Still ahead on the Al Jazeera News Hour. Fierce fighting in the Sudanese city of El Fasher forces thousands of people to flee for their lives. Coming up in sport, the hosts USA crash out of the Copa America. We'll have that story and more a little later on the show.
Now, it's been really cold down in Patagonia. It's still quite cold in parts of Patagonia and also this southern half of Argentina. Commodore Rivadavia, for example, is at 5 degrees. The average, surprisingly, maybe, is at 11, so we are below average here. But we're about where we should be to the north of that. The sun is shining, nothing now extraordinary. Even in our sunset, we're at 25, not 35, as was the case last week. North of the continent, there's been some pretty big downpours recently in Venezuela, and they're still there in the forecast, and also western Colombia, where, as always, landslides are a problem. Beryl, the first ever Category 5 storm this early, has barreled through Lesser Antilles, in the Grenada chain of islands and now is in the open water. The next warning has been issued for Jamaica. It'll still be a category 3 or 4 quite likely by the time it gets here, which is going to be late Wednesday local time. The track from that point might well take across the Yucatan, and then we're not quite sure where it'll go after that. Of course, it's a wet time of the year, and we've had flooding already in places like Guatemala and Nicaragua and El Salvador. That could easily be repeated. With still hot weather in the southern plains running up northwards, where the junction with cooler air comes across is where you get the big thunderstorms still in the US.
The latest news.
For the findings here could be used by the International Criminal Court as further pieces of evidence of Israel's war crimes in Gaza.
With detailed coverage.
Most of the 36 hospitals in Gaza have been destroyed, and critical health care remain inaccessible.
From the heart of the story.
The images from Jenin are part of the overall picture in the occupied West Bank, where violent Israeli military raids are relentless.
Al Care Foundation has delivered over $300 million worth of aid in more than 75 countries around the world. 100% of zakat and emergency donations spent on projects, and we ensure beneficiaries come first. Over 300 of our lawyers have entered Gaza through the Rafah crossing in recent months. Our motto is bless and be blessed, and we are turning your donations into direct delivery in the shortest possible time. Donate with confidence.
Top stories on the Al Jazeera News Hour. Israel's army has ordered hundreds of thousands of Palestinians to evacuate parts of